A quick welcome, everybody. I will introduce the panel very briefly and then allow Chi to speak a few words because she will be dashing off to do other things as our august first speaker. But just to give you a quick run through, for the students that have joined us, International Women in Engineering Day is really important to us. It's a very, very broad field. It encompasses so many things, from enormous heavy industry and people in hard hats through to sparkly nail varnish and everything in between. So please do take note of what you hear here and understand that what we're trying to do is open your eyes to a really interesting space where not only are there some significant career opportunities, but also, from my perspective, you as a generation of students are the ones that are going to save the world, and engineering is one of the places you can go to help do that in a really practical way. So I have a vested interest in getting this. We have, as part of our panel, the wonderful Jackie Bell, who is a chartered civil engineer, Dr. Barbara Vest, who's a special advisor and former director of generation at Energy UK. She's a member of our advisory board at Durham Energy Institute. We have Charlotte Adams, who's a great friend and who is now the commercial manager for Mine Energy at the Coal Authority. Kathy McClay, who is director of strategy, policy and regulation at Sembcorp Energy. And Hannah Baines, who is a PhD research student in the Department of Engineering at Durham University. And last but not least, Chi Onwurah, who has just popped in, who I'm going to allow to take precedence. Chi is a Newcastle MP. She is also an engineer and is a fantastic role model for anybody interested in getting women into subjects right across the board in science, technology, engineering, maths, medicine, but is an engineer herself, which I think is just awesome. Chi, I'm going to hand over to you, conscious of time, and let you say your piece first, and then I'm going to come to Charlotte next. Okay, so Chi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Joanna, for that fantastic, brilliant introduction. And you know, I've got Boris Johnson in front of me on my screen, and I do have to go in a few minutes. But I was really keen to take part in this because there are a few things which are more closer to my heart than women in engineering, and particularly women in engineering. As a chartered engineer who worked for 20 years, I know I look too young for that, but it is the case, 20 years in engineering, in telecommunications engineering all over the world before I came into Parliament in 2010. And one of the things I wanted to say, you know, so I'm the Member of Parliament for Newcastle upon Tyne Central. I was born and grew up. I was born in Wallsend, grew up in Newcastle. I studied at Imperial Electrical Engineering and worked in engineering. I am now the shadow, as well as being the MP for Newcastle, I'm the shadow minister for digital science and technology. So I'm Labour's spokesperson on that. And I'm also the chair of the all-party parliamentary group for diversity and inclusion in STEM. And today we released a report about the importance of greater equity in education, in STEM education. But what I really wanted to say was what a fantastic career engineering is. And I chose engineering as my first sort of choice as a career before politics, but for the same reasons I chose politics, you know, 20, 30 years later, which was because, you know, I wanted to make the world work better for everyone. And it's my view, and 10 years in politics have just emphasized that view, that politics and engineering are the twin engines of progress. They're the way in which humanity progresses, makes life better, safer, more in terms. And as a telecoms engineer, I have two phones, and one of them is not on silent. Now. It's those are, you know, and when I you know, there's so many stereotypes, and I you know, when I was at Imperial and in school, I was, you know, told all sorts of stuff about women not being able to do, not doing science and engineering, and you know, it's all generally crap, but particularly the idea that you know, women are more attracted by caring careers. Now, engineering is the most caring career, you know, possible in a way, because what is more caring than providing clean water or communications or, you know, addressing the climate emergency that we're currently facing, or ensuring that there's a vaccine for COVID-19 which is deliverable to everyone in the world within the next 18 months. All that is sort of the part of the opportunities that engineering presents. And as long as engineering doesn't have, doesn't represent humanity, doesn't have enough women, but also more BAME engineers and more working class engineers, more every disabled engineers, as long as it does that, it won't really be able to meet the challenges that humanity faces, because it won't have that breadth of experience of what really, what it is that we need to change about this world in order to progress and make it a better world for everyone. So engineering is a fantastic career, and there's not enough said about it, and there's not enough information about it. And I was just really grateful to the Durham Energy Institute for allowing me to come along today and just say that. So thank you very much, and have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, thank you. I'm very conscious that you need to step out now, so Chi, I'll let you go. Go talk to Boris. You need to thanks into the man. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
No worries at all. Bye-bye. Take care. And I can also now briefly just do a little bit of the housekeeping that I didn't do before, which is that there is a chat function, as there always is on a Zoom call, which we will be curating and keeping an eye on. So if you have questions, please do feel free to send them to us in the chat function, or put your hand up and we will involve you. And in the meanwhile, I'm just going to take a step into the background here and allow my colleague Charlotte to speak now. I've slightly changed the running order, my bad, I'm sorry, but I like to keep people on their toes. And also the screen has moved around since Chi came and went, so people are in different places. So I'm going to start with Charlotte so I don't miss anybody out. Charlotte, I'm going to hand over to you. You're still muted, my dear. You need to unmute yourself. And with hopefully slightly less of a rush than we had with Chi, but very grateful that she came along. Charlotte, over to you.
Thank you, Joanna. So I've recently joined a job at the Coal Authority as their commercial manager for mine energy, which is looking at getting geothermal from abandoned mines. But formerly, I was at Durham University, so I was a member of Durham Energy Institute and still an advisor to them. So very close links with Durham because I worked there for 11 years before the job I have now. So I classed myself as a bit of a geoengineer, and I got into this because I had some great teachers at school in STEM subjects, both male and female. There was two particularly, a male chemistry teacher, a female earth science teacher, who really inspired me to stay in the kind of science realm. And the reason that I do geoengineering is that I wanted to do something about environmental problems, and particularly water quality. I was very interested in the fact that in the area near where I lived and where we had school field trips, there was some metal mines there that people had walked away from 100 years or so or longer. They'd walked away from them, but they were still emitting toxic metals into watercourses, which were damaging fish and aquatic life. So I wanted to do something about that, and also the kind of contaminated land issues that were affecting people as well. So it was really environmental issues that made me want to be a geoengineer. And I was the first person in my family to go to university. I studied earth science for my first degree, and then the engineering component came when I was doing my PhD. So that's where I got involved in designing treatment systems to treat the water coming out of some of these abandoned mines, to remove the unwanted things from them, so metals mainly and toxic elements. We're removing those. And because doing that involved taking water samples, so some of the pictures behind me are some of the places I've worked, both above ground and below ground. But in taking water samples, I found out that the waters were quite warm. So that got me interested in geothermal energy, which is kind of what I'm working on now. And I wanted to change perceptions of geothermal. So those of you that learn about geothermal at school will probably be told that it's very common in places like New Zealand and Iceland, and these are the best places to go. And they're great, they're very hot, but we don't all live in those kind of hot volcanic regions. So I've been trying to raise the profile of other areas where more people live, where there are still good geothermal resources, but maybe not in those classic locations. So we're looking at the 25,000 abandoned mines we have across the UK that are now full of water, which is tepid. And we're looking at developing that as a geothermal energy source and a source of heat for the future. And just briefly reflecting on my career of being a woman in the energy industry. So I've worked in consultancy as well as in academia, and now obviously for the Coal Authority, which is a government organisation. For me, I'm very lucky. It's been a very positive experience. I think the engineering field gives you lots of choice, and there's many directions that you can take it in. And I think if you care about things, picking up on the comment that she made, I think it is a caring profession, because if you care about making a difference, then it does give you an opportunity to do that. I'm really lucky because I have worked with some inspirational mentors and still do. I find having somebody, a mentor, is really helpful, even if it's just kind of an informal mentor, both male and females, from everyone from colliery managers to professors at Durham, who have been very generous with their time and supporting with me. And I also enjoy working with other energy professionals through things like Durham Energy Institute. So it's great because we all have our own kind of pet technology that we're interested in. So we have some great discussions about how we can integrate it and get the most out of them. So all in all, I'd really recommend a career in engineering to anyone that's interested in STEM and problem solving, and anyone that wants to make a difference. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Charlotte. I've just put a little biography of Chi in the chat function for anybody that's listening that doesn't know who she is, because she's a pretty impressive young lady. But equally so are the ladies on my panel, and particularly Charlotte, who I worked with very closely and was bereft when she went to work for the Coal Authority, because I was relying on her to be very much one of the few females in quite a male-oriented project I was working on. But it's great to see her again and hear a bit about her story. I'm going to move one to the right now on my screen and come to Jackie, and give you an opportunity, Jackie, to tell us a little bit about your story. Over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Joanna, and hello everybody. It's great to be invited along to this fantastic panel of women. I'm a chartered civil engineer, so just to give you a bit, if you've never heard of civil engineering, which I haven't at your age, civil engineers are the oldest engineering profession, and they are the ones that create or engineer society, so that's why they are civil engineers. So they design and build roads, bridges, railway lines. They put in place all of our water, our clean water systems, and take our dirty water away. So you don't have to walk very far at all to find something that a civil engineer has constructed, and they are vital to society. So it's a fantastic profession. It's been around as a profession itself since 1818. And has been responsible for developing most of the infrastructure that you see across the country. So I'm very proud to be a civil engineer. When I was at school, I really enjoyed maths and physics, but I liked the art side as well. So I liked all of my subjects, but maths and physics, and understanding how to work things out and how things are the way they are, and how you can actually analyze things and understand how they work and how to make them better, was something I was really interested in. When I was speaking to my careers teachers, they suggested that I go and be an accountant, because that's what girls did with maths at the time, which is 30 years ago. And I decided that I didn't want to do that. So I went and did my own research and thought I'd have a look at architecture. I'd spent a lot of time as well at school being a venture scout, so I was very into building things, actually understanding how things work and putting things in place and seeing a problem that you have started with delivered. So actually building a car or making a bridge, things like that really, really excited me. So I went, during my A-levels, I went and had a look at architecture courses, and I realised that actually I didn't want to do architecture either, because that was too long a course, and it seemed to be more about what things looked like as opposed to how things worked, and that's what I was really interested in. So while I was touring the universities, I had a talk to all of the architects and found that civil engineering actually fitted with that. Civil engineering may let you study how to use materials to build things, to put roads in place, to create structures, to understand how fluids move around, to create dams, to manage rivers, all of those things. So I thought, well, that's what I'm going to go and do. So that's what I went and did. Once I did maths, physics and economics and general studies, which I don't think is an A-level anymore, but for A-level. And I went on to Aston University to do a sandwich course, which meant that I spent 2 6-month periods working on a site. And it was the construction of the M40. So over 30 years ago, I constructed or helped construct the M40, which was amazing because I got to walk up and down all of the fields and then watch them actually be dug up and relayed, modelled, the bridges built, the services, the gas, the electric, the water was put in, and I was part of all of that process. So it's amazing, and I think of it every time I drive up and down that section of the motorway now as well, that I remember it before it existed, and I was responsible for partly putting it in as well. So a great way of actually getting people from A to B. That's what civil engineering is about, is improving lives, actually enabling people to travel around quickly, hopefully supporting economic growth as well, so you can transport your goods from A to B much better. These days as well, we are now much more focused on doing things in an environmentally friendly way and benefiting our climate as much as we possibly can with engineering. So once I graduated, I came to work for Durham County Council on a graduate training scheme, and that was fantastic as well. There was 15 of us taken on in 1990, way back then, and I spent 4 years learning and delivering how to design and build bridges, build roads. I got a stint of a year in the geotechnical laboratory, where I spent quite a lot of time actually cleaning up the beaches in County Durham. And also at the time, this is when the old minefields were being renovated and rejuvenated as well, so we spent quite a lot of time remediating the soil, similar to what Charlotte was involved in as well. So we were looking at how can we reuse these very, very contaminated fields and bring them back into life. So a lot of that work is still there, and those sites have been built on as well. So that was really interesting. I was really, really pleased with that, and great to actually see something being delivered. I then took my professional qualifications after 5 years, so I became a chartered civil engineer and a registered member with the Institution of Civil Engineers. And I then went on to, because I was very interested in the environmental side, I went on to work for a waste management company down in Bedfordshire called Shanks. And that again was fascinating, because that was how to actually treat waste and make sure that it has no environmental impact, and make sure you, at the time, put it in the ground, make sure it stays there, treat all the water that comes off it. And I also got very involved in recycling and putting into place policies to try and divert all of our waste and reuse it, which has subsequently become a lot more mainstream as well. So I had going from designing roads and bridges to waste management. And then after that, I went to work for the Institution of Civil Engineers. I had the great privilege to go and work for them, which was actually going and speaking to all of the civil engineers around the country, advising them on how to become professionally qualified, but also raising the profile of civil engineering, meeting with politicians, writing policy documents, identifying what needed to be done to improve our infrastructure and to make us the society better and the infrastructure cleaner. So I've done a lot of work with that, and that was fantastic for me to actually be able to go and see the impact that civil engineers have and engineers have, and also to spend quite a lot of time encouraging more women and more minorities into the profession as well. So it's been great to be involved with that over the years. Since coming back up to Durham about 10 years ago, I've been working for the Energy Institute, and again, really, so again, another diversion from roads and bridges to waste management to influencing policy, and back now to working in the Energy Institute in research and supporting the researchers and trying again to get all of the research that goes on in energy at Durham University out there, making sure that it's implemented as well. So all of the things that we are doing, for example, on smart grids and trying to make energy more efficient and our usage more efficient. My role is to go and interact and network and make sure that people actually understand what we are doing, and that all of the research, all the latest big brains here at the university actually get to go and have that impact again on society. That's a quick whistle stop tour, I think, of my, again, quite meandering career, but at every stage I've had the skills to really enjoy it and to be able to add value and to make the change and shape the world that I wanted to do when I first began 30 odd years ago. Oh, I wanted to actually put this on as well. I thought this would be quite good.
There we go.
Yeah, can I just put this up?
Yeah, of course you can.
For those
You might need to increase its size a little bit. There you go.
Might be interested. So this is the Institution of Civil Engineers. So this is the institution that I belong to. They're also, obviously, as part of International Women Engineering Day, they are running a series of different events as well. And there's an online resource where you can go and actually check out more civil engineering women. So do check that out if you're interested.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. That's super. And thank you very much indeed, Jackie. Hopefully that gives those listening the really clear sense that there are so many different routes into and different routes through engineering. It's a very, very broad church. And in order to underline that, I think I'd like to maybe ask a colleague, Kathy, to come in next, not only because you are next, Jackie, but also because as somebody who isn't from Durham University, it sort of gives you an opportunity to hear a voice from the outside a little next up. So Kathy, can I ask you to speak up next, please? You're still muted. You're still muted. You need to do the unmutey thing.
I thought Lynn was doing it, sorry.
There you go, that's all right.
Yeah, hi everyone. You can probably tell I'm not from the Northeast. I've got the rogue accent around here. I actually grew up in Northern Ireland, and I've lived in England since 1987, but never quite got the hang of English as a language. So, but I actually decided at the age of 11 that I wanted to be an electrical engineer. And 40 years later, I am an electrical engineer. And it is so different from what I imagined when I was 11 years old. So as I said, I grew up in Northern Ireland on a council estate, but we have a very different education system over there. And I went to a grammar school, very traditional school. And at my school, if you were good at sciences, you did medicine. And if you were good at the arts, you did law. And that was it, really. And I didn't fancy either of those, actually, because it all seemed like you had to memorize a lot of stuff. And I'm sort of lazy. I prefer just working stuff out. So I thought medicine and law are really not going to be where I'm at in the future. And it was actually in my first year when I was 11 that we did a class called Design Technology, and we did electronics. And you got these little boxes and you could plug lots of things in, and you can make a burglar alarm or you could make an electronic organ. And I thought this was like magic, that you could create all this stuff. And I loved it, and I joined. I know I sound terribly geeky, but I joined the electronics club. And then it was around the time, it was the sort of mid-80s. And this is when I got my first computer. And I remember telling my nephew, who's now 21, oh, Daniel, I got a computer when I was... Sorry, can you hear someone else as well as me? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I got a computer. My parents saved up and bought me a computer when I was 14 years old. And I remember my nephew saying to me when I was telling him this story, he said, but how did you access the internet before that? And I said, look, Dan, the internet didn't come along until I was like doing my PhD. And he just was gobsmacked. He said, how did you find stuff out? So it was a really different time, but I loved programming my computer because it's really creative. And there's so much of a link between creativity and engineering. So I imagined I was going to go off to engineering at university and then program computers for the rest of my life. And that's not really how it ended up. I did go off to Imperial College and study electrical engineering. And I soon realized that I was much more of a people person than I thought I was. So I ran the student union. I really enjoyed my degree, did well. But I enjoyed the more teamworky side. I really did. I enjoyed the intellectual side, but I hate working on my own. So I then went and did a PhD where I mostly worked on my own, but enjoyed it, became an academic, and then realized that as an academic, so I was teaching electrical engineering at Cambridge and Imperial College. I loved the teaching and I didn't love the research. And I thought, what am I going to do? Because I can't do research for the rest of my life. And that's the point I joined the energy industry 20 years ago. And I've loved every minute of it being an industry. I've had so much variety. I joined a company first that owns Electric Mountain in North Wales, the pump storage station. and my job was to how to manage it economically. I've worked in the Netherlands, I've worked in France, I've worked on nuclear generation, coal, gas, but there's been a thread through it, even though I've had a lot of variety. It's all about solving problems that make a difference, and that's what I really enjoy about engineering. And the great thing is, energy is sort of core to our lives. You know, we can't do stuff, we couldn't be having this without electricity right now. And it makes a difference to people's lives. So when I go and sit and talk to my neighbours who are in their 80s, you know, they're really interested in my job and what I'm doing on decarbonisation, etc. And you know that what you're doing impacts people. And when I started out, it was all about secure, safe supply of energy. And now it's much more about decarbonising the economy. And before I joined Semcor 6 months ago, I spent 4 years at the system operator. They're the ones you sometimes see. They keep supply and demand in balance in real time, and you sometimes get them on the BBC and stuff. And a lot of my job was about, as we get more and more renewable generation, like wind and solar in the system, how do we keep the lights on and how do we keep it all working? And we sometimes think we're quite far behind in decarbonisation, but if you look last year, over 50% of all the electricity that was generated in the UK came from low carbon. And over 50% of the installed generation on the system is now wind and solar. So we've come a long way, but what's really interesting is you get a lot of technical problems with how you manage a system with that mix of generation. So for a lot of my career, I wasn't really using my technical engineering skills. I was using all of the teamwork and problem solving that I learned through my degree. But I was actually working more at the commercial end, and I was managing big teams, etc. But more recently, everything's coming together, and I'm working much more on the technical side and the commercial side. How do we create markets that allow people to supply reactive power, which most people don't even know what that is? And you then have to explain to, I remember explaining to a Financial Times journalist what reactive power was, etc. And it's kind of really interesting, taking very technical subjects and making them more simple. And 6 months ago, this is where my link to the Northeast comes. I joined Semcor, who've got a big site up at Wilton on Teesside. And there, there's loads of chemical works up there, and Semcor provide all of the electricity, the heat, the gas to these chemical works. And for its time, it's quite renewable. It's got biomass boilers, it's got waste to energy up there, etc. But I've become the director of strategy, and my job is about how do we decarbonize all of this? Because by 2050, the UK has to be net zero in terms of emissions. So how are we going to decarbonize? And I'm finding it fascinating. What I love is I'm learning new stuff the whole time. So for instance, I thought it would all just be about power stations and combined heat, you know, carbon capture and storage, storing carbon dioxide underground, etc. But we're doing a project with Arriva Trains looking at those branch lines where we've got diesel trains running. Can we convert them to hydrogen? How do we decarbonize heat? So what I love is these problems are all really important for the world. They're fun to solve, and I get to use my brain every day. So it's a great career, and there's, as everyone else has said, there's so much variety, and I highly recommend it. Thank you.
Doing this. Yes, right, not muted anymore, I don't think. Thank you very much indeed, Kathy. And the sense of fun comes through, even though you have got a strange accent. There's a really clear sense that you are hugely passionate about what you do, that you really enjoy it. And that, yeah, from my perspective, having done something I hated and been really bad at it when I first started out as a human being, when I finished my A-levels and I went off to do a law degree, which I really should never have done, hated every second of it. But my parents thought that I would be independent in a way that I wouldn't be if I had an English degree, which I really, really wanted to do. So absolutely, fun and variety and passion is really important. I'm going to hand over briefly now to Henna. Henna, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm just going to share my screen. Do that. Okay, is that coming through okay for everyone? Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Henna, and I'm an engineering and maths PhD research student at Durham. So the research that I do at the moment is mainly looking at offshore wind turbines, as you can see in the image there. And looking at the best way to connect those back to shore and designing the best way to do that. But I thought it'd be useful here for me to talk a little bit about how I got here, how I got to be doing an engineering PhD at Durham. So I'm going to start back at my GCSEs. So I did my GCSEs, and then I was thinking, and people were asking, what are you going to do next? So I think this is the stage just before where you are now. And I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but there were a few things that I knew. I knew that I was interested in science, I had a big STEM interest. I just loved figuring out how things worked, and I was curious, questioning the world around me and wanting to know more. And so from here I decided to do my A-levels, very STEM heavy, as you can see, in maths, further maths, physics and chemistry. And I really loved each of those subjects. But one of them really stood out for me, and it was maths. So my journey first starts with maths, and I go on to do a maths degree. And I knew this is what I wanted to do at the end of my A-levels. But I think what's important for me to tell you at this point is why I chose to do a maths degree. The first thing, I was very passionate about maths. And I think whatever you do, you have to really love it. If you're going to do it for a long time, you've got to be passionate about it. The second thing is that I loved problem solving. You know, I just love getting a problem, working through the difficulties, and getting to the solution at the end. I mean, just the other day, my friend wanted to know how much wood she needed to buy to build this really obscure shaped pond that she wanted to make. And I just loved drawing it out, figuring out the angles, the lengths of wood that she needed, and letting her know. So problem solving was the second reason. And the third reason was that maths is a very broad topic, and it opens up a lot of jobs. And so those are the reasons I chose to then go on and do a maths degree. From here, I was thinking, what next? And this step also wasn't very clear, but there were a few things that I knew. I knew I wanted to take everything I'd learned in my degree and apply it to a real life situation. I wanted to do real applied maths, and engineering is a great place to do that. And the other thing I knew I wanted to do was I wanted to do research. I wanted to find things out, discover things, and this is what led me to do an engineering and maths PhD research project. So I hope that journey was useful for you. And I'm now going to go on to tell you a few things about what research in engineering involves. So I spend a lot of my time writing computer code, doing experiments within my computer. I also spend a lot of time doing data analysis and making graphs, finding patterns in the data that I have. I give presentations like today, and I also watch presentations. I attend courses and learn new skills. I collaborate, that's a big thing within engineering and research, working with other people, putting together ideas and moving forward. Writing, putting all together all my ideas and work that I've done and writing that up. And finally, travel to meet other researchers, learn about their research and work together. So I hope that was useful for you, and I look forward to chatting more.
Oh, thank you very much. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. Much appreciated. That was really good. I keep calling you Hannah, it's Henna, isn't it?
I'll answer to anything.
Very sorry. I hate getting people's names wrong. So thank you very much indeed for that. And again, that was another really interesting perspective from a completely different space of how you can not just get interested in engineering, but how you can get into it and how you can explore the various routes that there are through it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, our last speaker is Barbara, who is, if you are ready, Barbara,
I am.
go from her rather luscious looking lounge or study or wherever she is. I love
the office at home.
I love that.
All you can see the wall, but you can't see the mess on the floor around me.
No,
so
no, that's why I've got my own personal background up. Just always showing everybody the mess that is my kitchen. Barbara, over to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's really, really great to welcome you to our panel discussion today. I'm really going to shock you now because I have a big confession. I'm not an engineer. I work in the energy sector with many of them though, both male and female, which is really, really interesting now. It wasn't always the case that we had that mix, gender mix, when I first entered the sector. And just for your information, there's a female engineer working at National Grid right now, one of Kathy's ex-colleagues, who has a team working for her that are keeping the lights on and keeping the power supply running. So that's a big up there for a female engineer. The sky truly is the limits these days, and it wasn't quite like that when I was your age and trying to make career decisions. I did fairly well at school doing subjects that my dad picked for me. I didn't select what I wanted to study. So I did sciences, I did maths, I did English language and English literature and history. I also did French, but we'll pass over that one because I failed my GCSE twice. I stayed on to do A-level maths, history and English, but then realised that my nana, who I lived with at the time, because my mum had died when I was very little, was actually doing 3 cleaning jobs a week to keep me in school. And my conscience wouldn't let me, a kid from a council estate in a pit village, stay on and let her have to work really, really hard to support me. So what did I aspire to be as a small child? I honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to do. As I say, my role model was my nana. And I knew I didn't want to be a cleaner. So I never envisaged having a job in energy. After my first year of A-levels, I found a job in local government at South Tyneside and then Newcastle City Council housing departments, working there. And then I had a career break because I realised I was doing a job that I really didn't like. I had 2 very young daughters and I thought I really needed time to assess where my future lay. And at the time, computers were beginning to come available on the market and were being installed within businesses right across the world. So I decided that I would like to do a little City and Guilds course to study computing. That led to a BTEC National in Computing for Business. And the last 6 weeks was work experience. And I asked to go to Northern Electric because it was the days of Maggie Thatcher and she had told us to buy shares in the electricity and gas companies. And they had 200 of my pounds and I wanted to know what they were doing with the money. So I joined Northern Electric and I was put in charge of their first ever computer help desk. So if somebody had a problem, they would call me, who knew next to nothing about computers really, to say, oh, how do I solve this problem? My printer's broken. And 9 times out of 10, I would scare the engineers that were in the business by waddling to their desk with a screwdriver in my hand. And they would know I wasn't qualified to use a screwdriver, but never mind, that's another story. So anyway, I set that up and I have Northern Electric to really thank because they funded me studying my computer for business degree by part-time study whilst I worked with them. Folk have asked me how I got to where I am in my career now, and I can honestly say it's just through a lot of hard work. There's no getting away from it. As a woman, you have to work hard to get somewhere in whichever industry you pick. And when I joined the industry in the 1990s, it was definitely very much a man's world. And still we have a problem where there are very few females on company boards amongst the members that I deal with. So that's something that we need to change. I've had a variety of jobs. I represented the industry on a variety of panels and committees that dealt with the rule book, I'll say, for simplicity's case. Kathy knows exactly what I'm talking about, our code governance framework. So I was really looking at change management, I would say, to put it simply. But I was one of the first women within our industry to be elected to serve on one of our service providers board, which was a huge thing in the year 2000. I'm one of the few women who serve on an all-party parliamentary group, because those positions are usually reserved for Lords and MPs. And I was in a minority of one for years, serving alongside men in a male-dominated sector. But I'm really, really pleased that when I go to industry meetings now, the gender change has definitely happened. And there are a lot more women who are really, really becoming to get to know and love the career that I've now been in for 30 years. So I was asked by my local academy, Hermitage Academy, what advice would I give to a 16 or 18-year-old about to move into a job or a career. So I hope this next little bit helps you. It's very different from what you've heard from the lady engineers, but it does tie into some of the questions from the previous panel section that was held. So what I'd say to you is, when you're moving into a career, you've got to believe in yourself. Because until you prove your value, nobody else will. I think what is a great tool that I've used throughout my career is something called a SWOT analysis. It's probably old school, but anyway, it's something where you look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, hence the acronym SWOT. And you can apply it to any situation. And you won't work out one SWOT analysis to last a lifetime. You'll go back and you'll polish it and you'll look at it and you'll have new information, and you will work on that for several very different areas within your life, be that work or family or business, you know, just whatever. Now, perhaps your teacher could set you off with a couple of problems to solve using this technique to give you an idea of how to get going. I also would say, don't worry about making the wrong career choice. You've heard from the ladies so far, many of them set along the wrong path with regard to what to study or with regard to their first jobs. Time is on your side. You'll have loads of opportunities throughout your life to reskill and to refocus. So don't be worried about making a change, but do make sure you've done a SWOT analysis to make sure it's the right change at the right time. Okay. And think about how you plan to transition from being in your school environment where you know all the rules, you know all the people that you see regularly, you know who to trust and those that you should be wary of, because you're going to have to go through that process of learning again to understand the environment in which you will be operating. You'll have to go through the same process into the next phase too. Once you learn the rules, you'll learn how best to make them work for you. And if they don't, how to influence them so they help others, okay? And don't be too deflated if you don't exceed at every task you're given, because you learn and improve by finding out what doesn't work as much as you do when it does. And please, please, please don't ever be too shy to ask a question. honestly, if you're sat around a table and you're thinking it, there's others in that room that are thinking it too. And if you sit in the meeting without contributing, then perhaps you won't be invited again. And what's the point of earning a place at the table if you don't use that place to try to influence the debate? The big thing that someone once told me when I joined a new office as well was to take my mind up, take time to make my mind up about the colleagues I was working with. Don't participate in tittle-tattle and gossip. 9 out of 10 times, those who are spreading it are the gamers, and they're using you to spread mischief and misinformation. Just sit back, like you have done at school, and wait and see what the people are like, and who wants to be your friend, and who really does help you improve when you're in that situation. We were also asked this morning what skills might be vital to be successful. And I'm sure the girls have got a list of things that they would tell you, but mine is that I should be true to myself. And if I do something that feels like it would be wrong, then I really sit back and think about it well before I decide which path to take. And if it feels right, then the rewards will follow. And if in doubt, I always apply the Nana test. So what would my Nana think if I did this or I did that? And it's usually worked so far. The other thing is, for goodness sake, if you're asked a question or given a piece of work to do, go away, research it and all of that lot. But if you don't know the answer, don't make something up, because you'll unravel any goodwill that you've worked hard to establish once your indiscretion is discovered. Really and truly, it's great to research something, to be honest with somebody and say, I don't know the answer to that at the moment, but I'll come back. I'll come back with the answer. Or, this is my trick, I'll come back with the name of somebody who does know how to do that. And that's always good to build a network of people who can help you. And you should, just got 2 more points. You should always help others. When you start to climb the ladder of success, remember back to when you knew nothing and you knew no one. And be a friend to those who look after you, and honestly, they'll look after you too in return. And as you go through life and you work for different people, you should aspire to be the type of boss that you've come to admire throughout your working life. Unfortunately, we all get to work for somebody who is a terrible boss. They can have the biggest brain in the world, they can be the cleverest person ever, but they might have not one iota of how to manage a team. So model yourself on those around you that take the time to show you some kindness and wise words. You'll be surprised how much that stands you in good stead throughout your work and your home life, with your family and those you work with who will become your friends. There you go. Something very different from me, the non-engineer.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much indeed to my other panel members. That was a fantastic way to round off a really interesting runaround, because while both Jackie and Charlotte talked to us about different routes that they've taken into engineering and through engineering, and Kathy gave us a huge and very vibrant example of the importance of it being fun and of using your brain and of the variety of life that engineering can bring. And Henna told us a lot about being, in effect, an academic's academic. Henna's taken a very much more traditional path through into engineering, but very clearly showed us the importance of applying theory to practice, about making a difference to the world that we all live in, which is really what engineering is all about. Barbara's given us some great examples there of not only how she herself has made a few cracks in the glass ceiling, if not bust through it completely herself in her time together, but also some fantastic advice. That transition plan I thought was really interesting, because you do tend to go from school into university, into the world, and presume you can do the same things in these three different spaces, but actually you can't. And the most important one, and what today is all about, is that sense that if you get to the top and they open the boardroom door and you walk in through that boardroom door, you do not slam it behind you. You leave the door open and you help people through it. You never pull up the drawbridge. And in particular, in a world of engineering, which has historically been very much a male world, and although Barbara says it's changing, it's still similar in too many ways. I think that opportunities like today's opportunity, whilst there are a few people online with us now, this is recorded and it will go out to many, many more, to inspire and enthuse and motivate girls to take part in the world of engineering at lots of different levels is a really important opportunity that I'm delighted that all of the panel have taken advantage of. There is, in the chat function at the side of the page, there are rather 2 or 3 links that I think might be useful. There's some interesting stuff from Jackie about where your electricity comes from. There's a dashboard there, which is fun to watch. And Charlotte has also put up a link to some of the mine energy projects that she's working with. There's also, should you wish, a couple of minutes left if any of the students who are online have any particular questions to ask our panel. But while you're thinking about that, it is, I think, really important for me to try and make it really, really clear that everybody on this panel has come to where they currently are from very different routes. Some people intended to do it from the get-go, others have tripped and fallen into engineering, into academia, into a work environment that gives them the opportunity to work in engineering. And as I think Lynn has just put up very sensibly, it'd be interesting to know whether any of the students online are considering doing engineering as their first undergraduate degree. It's not like business in that if you don't do an undergraduate degree in engineering, it's less easy to go into a master's degree in engineering, because you tend to need to have a set of transferable skills. You tend to need to have a little bit of science under your belt in a way that maybe other degrees don't lend themselves to. But it would be good to know if there's anybody on the call now, or anybody who might like to reach out to us after today to let us know that they're thinking about engineering as a degree, because it would be really interesting to get a sense of how we might be able to help inform you about what you need to do to be an engineer. Amelia says she's applied for deferred entry, which doesn't surprise me, heading into 2021 to do engineering. And Kiona, thank you very much indeed. You can get involved in all sorts of stuff while you're at sixth form. As Jackie's pointed out there's the Women in Science and Engineering group that we can put you in touch with. And I'm sure that also through the various, and I think there are 38 of them, institutes of engineering, they have really strong student representation where we can plug people into. There are a couple of other bits and pieces rather that I think Lynn might be able to get out to those present on the call today in terms of how we can get students in sixth form involved. But equally, if you want to get one of the panelists today to come into your school and talk when we are capable, or maybe virtually, doing a conversation to your students when we are in a slightly more open environment, because I'm conscious right now GCSEs have been and gone, A-levels have been and gone, maybe September, October, we'd all be absolutely delighted to virtually or in the real world pitch up and speak to your students. I gather while we were online here that Boris has reduced it from 2 meters to 1 meter, and he's saying that hotels and restaurants can open up. I see Barbara with her head in her hands, but hopefully by September, October, we might be able physically to come in and do a little bit more real life hand waving as opposed to doing online. Jackie's put up a note as well to the STEMettes, which is a great group, and eTrust. So again, have a little look in the chat function there for other places that you can go. But we would be delighted to assist if there's anything else that we can offer to you. Amelia says here, quick question, and probably the last one we'll have time for, but do we often find women in engineering tend to go down the environmental and humanitarian route? Because that's what you're most interested in. And that's a really interesting question. I'm going to, Barbara's giving me a big nod here, but equally I know that Charlotte might be,
engineers.
Charlotte might have something to say here as well. So maybe if I can give Kathy the chance, because Kathy is also looking like she's itching to speak, and then maybe.
Yeah, I must admit, I can't, it's not what attracted me to engineering first. it's what's attracted me in later life as I've realized more about climate change, etc. But for me, it was just the interest and the fact it was something that it was interesting to do, and it solved problems. But I don't think it's necessarily that we're naturally just more caring, etc. And I worry that would put off people from doing some of the other kinds of engineering as well. It's cool to be an engineer of any sort, in my view, whether it's more on the environmental, humanitarian side or not.
Very true. Thank you for that. Charlotte, did you want to chip in here as well?
For me, I was interested in environment, so it was a bit different for me, but I suppose because I came in through an earth science route, it's probably due to my interest in that as well. So I don't know what the stats are in terms of how many women there are in the environmental bit as opposed to the rest of the engineering subjects. I know in Durham I taught some of the engineering students there, and we had roughly a 50-50 split of male and female in the class on the general engineering degree, which was good.
Okay, thank you. I know that Jackie put a hand up there as well, and Kiona also had a question that we need to come back to.
Yeah, so just my experience working for the Institution of Civil Engineers, I would say that there are generally more women working in water engineering and geotechnical engineering, the environmental side, than there are in the strict structural aspects of it. So that's what I've seen, and people can enjoy both, but that seems to be where a lot more women appear. So it's getting on more towards 50% in that aspect.
Kiona's question was a good one as well. Is there anything that we can recommend that she gets involved with while she's at school to help her educate herself a little bit more about the potential that there is in engineering, particularly at sixth form? And there is the STEMETs, which I think were mentioned a little bit further up. And where have they gone? The STEMETs was there, I'm sure it was. Yes, Charlotte put that up. The STEMETs are a really interesting organisation, and there's also the guys at eTrust who have a taster courses, so that you can have a little test drive of the various different types of engineering and other STEM-based subjects that there are. So if you click on those two links, they're probably a really good place for you to go. But equally, if you're really interested, Kiona, when this particular panel session finishes in a few minutes, do feel free to reach back out to us through the original email that came to your school. And, you know, with specific questions that we might be able to help you with. Most of us are normally more than happy to help do a bit of informal mentoring, point you in the right direction, connect you with people that you might like to job shadow. And I know Henna, I keep pointing because she's over there on my screen. She might be over there on your screen. She's over there on mine. Henna had something she wanted to contribute here as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you have an interest in a particular subject, you should try and reach out, and I'm sure that the DI can help you find someone who is studying that at university, if that's what you want to go on to do. And you can just ask them, pick their brain, ask them questions about what it's like, what do you get to do, and just ask someone who's currently doing it, I think would be my advice to get to know a bit more.
So I suggest you drop an email to Henna, basically.
Yeah, and that can be me if you'd like.
All right, I think we've possibly got a couple of more messages just to run through, because Kiona's saying thank you, that's good. And Lynn has also done a little link in the chat function to some information about Durham's outreach function. Although not everybody wants to come to Durham University, is a fabulous university, and its engineering school is exceptional and world class. And the Durham Energy Institute, of which I'm a director, is a really, really interesting place full of, the reason I'm a member is because there are anthropologists and there are lawyers and there are business school people and there are engineers and physicists and chemists, and there's Charlotte who covers all the above and a few others as well. So, you know, we do represent a really good cross-section of interested people.
Can I do a shout out for Imperial College then, where I'm a visiting professor as well?
Of course you can. Imperial's not bad. They're all right.
It's above average, I guess.
They're okay. It's good to be in august company.
Yeah.
I think we probably have to sign off now, because I'm conscious everybody's got to other things that they need to do. But thank you very much indeed to those of you who came. These panel discussions are really important, and while I'm conscious that there aren't so many of you actually on this one, as I say, it's being recorded and will be redistributed. And also I have spoken to students over the years. I had an email a little while ago from a girl that I spoke to 7 or 8 years ago when she was a lower sixth girl. She's just come out of university now, and she reckons that everything she did because of 2 or 3 things that I happened to mention to her in passing about getting women into the STEM subjects. And she's going off to do, she's specialising in a particular form of medicine. You know, so you never know. Keep in touch with us and let us know how your careers progress, because basically, for those students listening, you're going to save our planet. So we're relying on you really to get this right. Anything we can do to help, I think, is important. So thank you from my panel. Thank you from me. Thank you to the wonderful Lynn who made this all happen. And ladies representing the various industries who spoke today, your input is hugely appreciated. For those of you attending, let us know how you get on, and we hope to keep in touch with you. Thank you very much indeed.